this really, really big dent in this guitar, and I was really, really upset. So what I ended up doing is I had a glass of water. I always have a glass of water next to me when I'm practicing, for those really, really hot sessions. And the glass was sweating, and it created this like little water suction underneath the basically what it is, it's a tile. It's like a tile, but it's like a coffee coaster thing. And I picked it up to take a drink, and it sucked it with it. So it was with it. And then I went over it, and it fell. Crack, the end of it went straight into this and put this dent in it. And I was so mad at myself. Yeah. But it's character. It's a story. It's a story, They're like, oh, how'd you get that dent? Well, I was practicing, and a coffee coaster fell on it.
I'm amazed I haven't put more dents in my instruments.
Yeah, honestly, and the thing is I always feel like I really baby my instruments too. I'm always like really like overly protective about it, and like really protective about who I allow playing it, and like I'm just very anal about it because, I mean, on the surface it's not an overly expensive guitar. Like when you think about it, you're like, okay, $1,200 for a guitar is not a lot of money. But like on the surface, like $1,200 is a lot of money depending on what you're spending it on, right? So like it just depends on the application. Like I was having this argument with my mom the other day. I was talking to her about YouTube, and I was talking about her how how channels are set up and how my channel was growing, and I told her that I just hit 1,300 subscribers. And
congratulations, by the way.
Oh, thank you. And she's like Justin, that's great and all, but 1,300 isn't a lot of people in the grand scheme of things. And I'm like, okay. I said, okay, but it's all about application. So I said, imagine you giving a speech to 1,300 people in one room or a hall, or giving a concert at that fact where you're the only person on stage. Does 1,300 still seem small? No. It's all about application,
It's like my high school, dude.
Yeah, legit. If you think about an entire high school, that's a lot of kids.
Like sometimes I try and think about that, like, oh my god, I'm about to sound like such a dork right now, dude. But I'm a big iFunnier, at least I used to be. And so I'll make a meme, and it'll get like 20,000 views, and then maybe it was more. Anyway, it'll get like a pretty decent number, but I'm still like, okay, but like that's not gonna make a featured list. But then at the same time, I think about it, and I'm like,
it's a lot.
And that's the thing is, I think about it, I'm like, well, actually, if I imagine the entire population of Okemos seeing this meme, that does put the pressure on a little bit, change it up.
You should follow on Instagram. God, let me look it up real quick. There's this funny. You have to follow them, and it's a private account, and they have to accept you to it. But they have really, really funny memes on it. There's like all kinds of different memes and stuff. But like I came across this a long time ago because I had this person that suggested it to me. It's called Send Memes. And it's got like the Pornhub logo. But it says Send Memes. And it's hilarious. And there are all these different features and stuff. And you can send them. And in the bio it says Send Memes, not nudes. But it's really, really funny. It's got a lot of funny stuff on it.
My first semester in rock band, we were all just sort of in the middle of like, someone was like showing a chart to our teacher or something. And I was just sitting at the kit. And I do the Pornhub intro, and I look around, and no one really like notices except for one guy. He looks at me, and then he does like a point to me, and does the head nod, like, "Hey, I see what you're doing. I see what you're doing." I was like, We should like keep the guitar around whenever we're recording, just in case if we need that like comedy relief.
More.
All right, we'll go on off of that. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the MuseTube Podcast. Kind of a long, sort of cold open intro for you, but I don't know. I had a fun time. Did you have a fun time?
Yeah, we are shameless in our introductions, and we are just two casual men, dishing it out. There's no reason to be fake. Men. Did you ever watch 2.5 Men?
A little bit. Back when they still had Charlie Sheen.
Oh, no, Ashton Kutcher. Yeah. Anyway, that was a good show while it lasted.
Back in the day. Anyway, so welcome to episode 3. Today we're going to talk a little bit about some musical elements for you, because that's something else we want to do. We want to break down maybe a certain aspect of music, and then explain it to you so you can get sort of maybe a lesson on it about what we do know about it, and then also try and find some real world applications, from artists and stuff. So that way you also maybe get some musical recommendations for you.
100%.
Well, before we get into that, how you doing?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay, just good. I just want to make sure you're doing good.
Oh, I'm great, dude. I got this Celestial Bangle tea.
It's good tea. I also have a cup.
I made the cup.
I know you did.
Yeah, definitely if you guys are tea fanatics or you like tea, you should definitely check out Celestial. Like Celestial meaning space. It's a really, really good brand. They're based out in Boulder, Colorado. I actually had the opportunity to go and visit them and tour their factory. This is 2 summers ago, I think, before COVID-19. And it's really good. They're like one of the largest distributors of herbal teas and white teas and black teas, all kinds of teas. And it's really interesting because I thought I knew a lot about the tea, but there's a lot of processes that people don't understand about tea.
Is this going to be the start of a new subsection of a podcast called T-Tube?
I'm just saying, like...
Welcome back to the T-Tube Podcast.
Not all tea is made from the leaves. Did you know that? Like, herbal tea is not actually made from a tea plant.
Right.
It's actually made from other spices and worldly goodness.
Yeah. Chai tea is pretty spicy. I like some chai tea latte.
Dude, I like a little matcha. You like matcha?
I don't know. Like, I'm a barista, so I understand... basically, that means I'm poor, everybody.
Wait, is barista a unisex term?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, barista is just for anyone who's who's making the coffee. Okay. In my case, also tea.
Okay. Because I always thought barista was like a pronoun just for women.
It kind of sounds like it.
Yeah.
And I kind of had that thought like going into it, and then I was getting like my interview, and my guy was like, "So, what do you know about being a barista?" And I was like, "Well, for one, I thought that it didn't really apply to guys, but..."
So it's not like it's like Spanish where you have like O for masculine, A for
baristo.
Baristo. I'm a baristo. Strokes the stash.
No, but I don't know. So I know that people like matcha tea. It's just not for me. It's a little...
It's a little green. I get it.
It tastes like dirt, and I'm not trying to say this. No. I'm not trying to like crap on anybody who likes matcha tea.
Well, you just did.
Well,
I'm just kidding.
It's okay if you like the taste of dirt. I used to eat dirt when I was a kid.
Hey, dude. I think honestly, if we all ate more dirt, we might not have been impacted by the virus as much.
We wouldn't even know that it happened.
Yeah, because it just like our body just fought it off. But anyway, yeah, we're talking all today about harmonics, a musical application that is applicable to string and fretted instruments, which I'm really excited about because when researching today's topic, we were thinking about different musical elements that we could discuss. And Eric had brought up to my attention any type of techniques that we could think about. And me being primarily a guitar player, I thought I would be interested to talk about an application that is primarily just used on guitars and other stringed fretted instruments. Although I can't speak on behalf of like a banjo or anything like that. But I'm assuming that you could do this similar thing. But a rake harmonic, for some of you that don't know, is this little pingy noise that you get when you don't actually fret a note, but you hover your finger over a specific string.
So just very lightly touching.
Yeah, and there are these things that are called natural harmonics where you don't actually have to fret a specific note, where you're just... And then there's artificial harmonics where you actually fret a note, like I have a C major chord here, and you go 12 frets above, which is really, really cool. And the reason I love this application so much is because it's very melodic in nature, and you can get a lot of really cool resonant tones that you can't necessarily get on other melodic instruments. Like you can obviously do a harmonic on a piano or a saxophone, which would be really cool if you could. But that's what's really awesome about the technique behind it. You can create little melodies with it and create these cool like cascading sound effects.
Another thing that's interesting is they tend to go lower pitch the higher you go on the neck, right? As opposed to how normally frets work.
Yeah, so normally this is what's interesting about the guitar too, is like if you're just taking a note and you go up the neck, you're going up in pitch, right? This is considered up the neck because it's up in pitch. The opposite of that is if you go down the neck, you're going down in pitch, which is really interesting because people always say that you're going down the neck this way because they think of this as up and they think of this as down, but it's really the opposite because you have to think about it and going up in pitch and down in pitch.
I had a little bit of a personal battle if I wanted to say up the neck or down the neck, and I just thought for reference, I might as well just say up. But continue.
It's really interesting though because if you think about it in terms of like a piano and the way that the piano is laid out, you would think of it not necessarily as up and down because it's more linear. But the guitar is linear as well, which is really interesting that you don't necessarily think of up and down. You just think of like left and right.
Right. Which
is really, really kind of interesting. But like on the guitar, you don't really think of it. You just think of up in pitch or down in pitch, which is really, really cool. Which I know a lot of guitar players kind of get frustrated with that, as you kind of mentioned, because they're confused because they say, oh, if you mean down, you mean this way, and if you mean up, you mean that way, which is kind of the complete opposite of what we're kind of taught, you know?
Right.
But anyway, again, with harmonics, there's all these cool different applications that you can use with it where you can arpeggiate the chords and actually like pick out little melody lines around it, which is really cool. So like if you say you have any kind of progression, like let's say you have a G to a C to a D, well, you can play those directly. In harmonics, which is really, really cool. You can get all these cool applications. Now, one of my favorite aspects about harmonics, which I have come across, this is a fairly new technique to me, and I'm going to plug someone. He's a jazz guitarist and a classical guitarist, all nylon string. He's from Sweden. His name is Lucas Brar, B-R-A-R. He's got a really huge YouTube following, and he does these, and this is kind of where I've got the technique from, which is what we call a rake harmonic, which is this idea of instead of just playing your notes individually like this, which serves a greater purpose, he'll do it where he actually plays those all in one stretch. So he's playing all these harmonics, not individually, but almost as like a chord. It's a really, really cool application because you get this like harp effect. And there's some instances where you can pick out a chord, such like this, a major 7 chord, and you can actually trace that. So normally you would pick these notes out like this, but you can actually trace the chord, which sounds really, really cool. And you hear this a lot in Lucas Brar's music. He does that a lot in a lot of his own arrangements and stuff. And I came across this and I was like, what the hell is this guy doing? And I've never seen it before because you don't see that in sheet music. You'll see harmonics in music like that, but you'll never see it where it's like simultaneously happening all at one time, which is really, really cool. And I like the sound of it a lot. It's like a harp.
And these also do work on electric guitars. You'll get a very different sound.
Yeah, totally different tone. Obviously, if you're cranking up some type of effect, whether that's like a distortion or like a flanger or a chorus or something, you'll get a really, really cool effect too. Although I find it really hard to do. Harmonics are a little bit more difficult, at least for me, on electric guitar because the strings are so much more lower to the fretboard. So like when you are actually going to play one, you're just hovering your finger. You're not actually pressing that string down. So because the strings are closer to the fretboard, I find that I mute it a lot more. So I just get that ping. It's like, dead space, and it's not really coming out as a tone.
And you've also got, specifically for electric guitar, I'm not sure if this would have even worked that well for like an acoustic, but something called pinch harmonics.
Yeah.
Which is when you actually are holding down the fret. And it almost seems like you wouldn't want to call it a harmonic in the name because that would sort of imply a different technique, but you're taking your pick, and it will also change depending on where you do it by the pickups on the string. But when you strum, you try and set up your thumb in a way where it'll instantly mute it as you strum it.
Yeah.
And that's how you get, I don't know if you listen to like metal, you hear like sort of like almost a squeal sort of sound coming out of it.
It's a really interesting technique because immediately after you actually pluck the string, you immediately have to touch it with your thumb. to mute it, but you don't want to mute it where it's like completely deadened.
And that's usually what I end up doing.
And it's a really hard, which I don't even think it's hard to get it on acoustic. Once in a while you might be able to do it by accident. You can hear the little click. It's really you have to have like usually like a lot of distortion, or you have to have the gain on your amp. But occasionally you'll hear it like on acoustic, like it's like accidental, but you'll hear it. And that's usually like if the amp's like, you know, cranking too, you know, maybe like in a transition or a chordal passage.
You like using harmonics? I don't like
in an electric sense or a
in your own acoustic, like in your own personal.
Oh shit,
playing.
Yeah, I use harmonics all the time.
Yeah, me too.
I'll be like doing like like if I'm. You know? You know, I add harmonics in all the time. I usually use that as like an ending phrase, but it's like sometimes like if I use it too often, people like expect to hear it. But I'll just like add in harmonics, like even when I'm like if I'm playing like a classical piece. That harmonic's not in there. I just think it sounds badass.
You know, something that I recently started doing just because for some reason I just love the sound of it is I'll either mostly on my acoustic because my electric's in a bit of a sad state at the moment. My low E string for pretty much the whole length of that pickup range just completely uncoiled, and it's heartbreaking. I still have to restring that bitch anyway.
What kind of guitar is that?
It's an LTD. Don't remember exactly which model, but it looks kind of like the body of a Gibson in a way. That's
like, is that like more like a metal brand?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Like when I showed it to our rock band teacher Chris, he was like coming over trying to show me something. And he's like, "Oh, you got an LTD, this fucking grimy piece of work right here." And I was like, "Okay, thanks, man."
Yeah, I feel like that's like the metal version of a Les Paul, right? Essentially.
Yeah, it kind of looks and kind of feels in that way.
Okay, because I've seen those a lot, and those are like very like the pickups are really hot in them, aren't they? What are the pickups like? They're like more than a P90, aren't they? Because they're wound a lot hotter.
The thing is, I don't know enough about guitars to be able to tell you that.
So my question is like, if you plug, so I've never understood about this because like in my Jazzmaster, they're single coil, like clean as hell pickups. Like if I put it on, I'm gonna get no hum back, nothing. So when you have like a humbucker pickup, you're gonna get that hum because it's like really sensitive and reactive. So like if you were to plug that into an amp and didn't have any effects on it, it would still be clean, right?
Yes, I get sort of what you're saying. Mine will buzz and hum when you're barely even touching it. Like I'll play a note and then I'll lift my fingers off of the string, off of the fretboard, and I'll just start getting that.
So it's really active.
It's super active and super hot, and it honestly makes it very difficult to try and. Only very certain effects will work under very certain circumstances. Like you have to pick like the right amount of distortion, otherwise you can't hear anything. It just sounds like a kind of like.
Damn. See, because like I've never owned a humbucker guitar. I've had active pickups and like a Strat where you can split the coils and it's supposed to give a humbucker effect, but it's still like really, really tame and really clean.
Well, something funny about when I was picking out this guitar, the reason I picked it out is because like I was sitting at LCC and I was listening to some music, and this was like right after I just joined Rock Band, and for some reason I just had this overwhelming urge to just start learning the guitar. You know, I still haven't done lessons. I feel like I'm definitely gonna get into that at some point, but you know, I'm trying to learn what I can on my own. So I immediately texted, you know, like my fam, and I was like, I'm gonna be home late, I'm just going to buy a guitar, and they're like, what? And so thankfully I had a full-time job at the moment, but I quickly went to Guitar Center on my way home, and I was just looking, and I found that LTD for like $150, and the person who owned it before put like a skull candy like sticker on it. And so me being the guy that I was, not knowing anything about guitars at the moment, I was like, there's no way that Skull Candy makes guitars, because it seemed, they're like an audio company, so it seemed feasible enough in my head. I don't know. I definitely wasn't, like looking at it wondering if Skull Candy made good guitars.
Do you ever feel like people purchase guitars just based on brand and not necessarily like there's a reputability about buying specific brands? Like obviously if you're going to buy a Fender, you know that you're going to get a decent product.
Right.
95% of the time.
Right.
I mean, so like it's just unfortunate because like I feel like it's just like I don't know. It just goes beyond guitars though too. I mean, it's like any name brand thing. But like there are arguably really, really good guitar companies out there that make really, really great instruments that people don't necessarily know about. Like, for example, Godin guitars. You'll never find a Godin in a Guitar Center. You will never find a Godin unless you're going on like a direct site that has the licensing to sell them, like Sweetwater, Musician's Friend, or something like that. But like Godin is like one of the actually Godin is the largest distributor of guitars in North America. I just learned this. So Godin owns Siegel guitars. They have share in Guild guitars, I think. And there's a bunch of like sub brands that they own. And so like just because it doesn't have the Godin name on it doesn't mean that they don't own it. But like Godin is like it's like the equivalent of like Fender owning like Squier.
Right.
And yeah. It's like they have all these like sub companies underneath them, but like you've never heard. I mean, nobody's ever heard of them. Like I get so many questions asked about this guitar. I remember I was playing this guitar one time at a gig, and it was just when the Fender Acoustasonic had been released at NAMM, and somebody was like, "You have the Fender Acoustasonic?" And I'm like, "Bro, no, I don't. I don't want to play that shit. Like, what are you talking about?" And is that the Acoustasonic? I'm like, "No, dude, it's like half the price and it's better."
So like, tell me if I'm wrong, but one company that I feel like over the past 10 years, because when I started originally as a bassist, and when I was looking at like my first like real bass, I came across a company that I had never heard of at the time called Ibanez.
Oh yeah,
So I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the last 10 years they seem like they've become much more prominent and like reputable.
So I think there's this like purist thing with American guitarists, because American guitarists want to buy American brand guitars because there's this heritage with American brand. And Ibanez is a Chinese company. It's either Chinese or Japanese.
I think it's
an Asian denomination.
Yeah, I can't remember.
But they make a lot of cool guitars. In fact, there's a lot of guitarists that are American that are endorsed by them in multiple facets of music. So like Steve Vai is obviously an Ibanez endorsee. The Steve Vai Gem models with the monkey grip on it.
What a great guitarist to have like in your back corner for Ibanez. Wow. George
Benson, jazz guitarist. He's got his own jazz model through Ibanez called the LGB, the Little Georgie Benson. That's what the models are called, LGB. Little Georgie Benson. But they're sweet. They're sweet guitars. They're arch top guitars. They got jazz pickups in them, which are really, really cool. But yeah, definitely, I would concur with that. I think Ibanez. I personally have an Ibanez. My first acoustic guitar that I ever learned on was an Ibanez, which I didn't know it at the time. It was like $100 Ibanez pack.
Well, like I remember part of the reason, like the only reason I didn't end up getting the Ibanez that day that I picked, I ended up with a fretless jazz Fender. I want to say it was a Squier model, which again didn't know it was fretless until I went up to the. I have this terribly bad habit of not looking over every inch of a guitar before I buy it, because like I went up to I must have played it. I must have, but I just didn't really notice, and so I took it up to the counter, and he's like, you're picking the fretless," and I was like, "The what?"
I didn't know that there was such a thing.
Well, I don't regret that bass at all. That was a beautiful bass. But the only reason I didn't get the Ivy is because I like to call them Ivies, by the way, is because it was a little bit out of my price range, but I remember because it seemed so unique compared to the others, because you've got Gibsons and you've got like Fenders all across the walls, and you're like, okay, and they all kind of look the same, just with different colors for the most part. And then I just saw that weird one, and I was like, this is it plays nice too. It plays beautifully.
Yeah. That's the funny thing is because like you look at guitar body shapes, and they really haven't changed since like the 50s when they first started coming out. Like the Les Paul, I think, came out in like 50. Like the first Les Paul was like late 50s. I want to say between like 57 and 59. And then the first, well, before Fender Strats were really, really big, the first ever Fender guitar was the Telecaster.
That's probably my favorite design, personally.
The design, but the designs have stayed the same for the last 50, 60 years. And so like every other company that builds a guitar that's not either Fender or Gibson uses that body style in mind, which is really, really funny because I'm really surprised that Gibson and Fender haven't put like a patent on their body shape, because headstock designs have patents on them. Like if you look at a Fender headstock, there's no other headstock that's like that unless it's Fender. There's similar ones around it, and even like Gibson's got that specific headstock, you know. And so, like, you can't patent body shapes, though, I guess.
I don't know. I'm just starting to think about, like, talking about body shapes, thinking about, like, those super, super just annoying, like, arrowhead shape that you see, like...
Oh, you're talking about, like, the
like,
Gibson...
you know, like, thrash metal guys.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Or, like, the star shape or whatever, those weird things.
Yeah. I think, like, I don't know. I think the most comfortable guitar that I've ever had to play was definitely my Telecaster until I got my Jazzmaster body, because the inside of it is beveled where it hits on your stomach area which is really, really nice. So it has almost like this guitar, like it's got like this, but like up here where it lays against you.
Right.
So it's really, really, really comfortable to play. But like some of the guitars, I don't know, they're just like literally just hunks of wood, and they're not really the most comfortable thing to play. My thing is like I want playability just as much as I want it sounding good. I will take playability over sounding good any day of the week, because if it sound, you can always upgrade your sound.
Oh yeah. But
you can never upgrade the playability. If the playability is shit, then it's not fun to play, and I'm not going to play it. It's not enjoyable, you know.
My friend Ben Carino, who was on our interview episode 2, he told me when we went to Guitar Center one time that the first thing he does with every guitar, like before he starts playing it, this is like his, if he even knows if he'll be interested or not, is he'll go up and he'll grab the neck with his left hand, and then he'll just hold it, and then off of that he'll either decide if he wants to play it and he's interested, or if he's not.
Right.
So like, I don't know, each guitarist kind of has their own like weird sort of like preference.
Yeah, and like it doesn't even matter. Like, okay, so like this is the interesting thing about guitars too, is you can have guitars that are spec wise the exact same, like the same exact model, the same exact specs, but each guitar is going to be different.
Oh yeah.
Because like if they say, okay, well this guitar is made out of elder. Okay, well if this guitar is made out of an elder tree, but it's a different elder tree than this other elder tree, there's going to be an impact in there. And people don't think about that, but there definitely has to be. Because I mean, think about it, like if you use this elder tree at 30 years old and you use this elder tree at 15 years old, don't you think there's going to be a difference in the wood?
Oh, of course.
So like, I mean, I'm not trying to get into the tone wood debate, but I definitely think like no matter, like, I don't know, just like these Godins. I've played other models that are just like this Godin, and they sound a little bit different. The timbre on it is different, the brightness on it is different, even though they're technically the same model. It's because different wood, you know, different time of the year they made it. You know, I think every little detail in making a guitar matters.
You know something I'm interested in? Check out this ring that I've got on. It's actually a coconut ring.
It's just made
I
out
got
of
in California.
coconut?
It's made out of coconut, but I'm feeling that. I'm like, I don't know. Would that be? Please don't.
I'm just kidding.
That'd be like, I wonder if that would be like an interesting, if it would be possible to make like a guitar.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think, like, I've seen that, like, where people make rings out of, like, ash. Have you seen that?
You know, there's this has nothing to do with music, but there's this YouTube channel I found recently, and I think I want to say he's Japanese. He's this Japanese YouTuber, and he must have some sort of like chemistry degree or something. And what he does is he makes kitchen knives out of anything. He made a kitchen knife out of rawhide and soot. He's made a kitchen knife out of milk. Because he'll like take like a base like material, and then he'll just like
mix it with stuff.
He'll do like the chemical stuff to do it, and then he'll sharpen it, and he will like do a test at the end with some sort of like something to measure like how hard they are, and so then he puts it on the list of like all these knives, and so you're looking, you're like, okay, it's a rice knife, a ravioli knife.
What the heck? I've seen that like with guitars, where people make guitars out of like, there's this, I don't even know his channel is, he made like a guitar out of colored pencils.
Colored pencils?
Yeah, so he like took all these colored pencils, cut them in half, made them so that they're the same height, glued them all together, put like epoxy resin over them so they're all it's clear. Okay. And then he like sanded it, and so he's got like a strap body that is made out of colored pencils, and it looks freaking sweet. And it sounds, I don't know, it sounds really cool. It's got like a Strat neck too on it.
I wonder about doing something like that, but with like an acoustic, because then you got to worry about all the insides and like how it.
I don't even know like what that would sound like, because like normally like with a guitar, like at least with an acoustic guitar, you want a solid piece of wood because of the resonance and how it vibrates, the soundboard and how it vibrates. So I don't know how that would work in terms of, it would look cool. It would look cool as shit, but like I don't know. I'm kind of like a purist and a traditionalist in that sense, because like I do like guitars that are obscured and they look weird, but I don't know if I would ever play them personally.
No, me too.
Because I feel like they drag too much attention.
It would have to be an unnoticeable difference, like in a gimmick store where you could be like, hey, check this out, this guitar, you want to try playing it? And they're like, oh, what kind of material is this? And then you would say the material, but you wouldn't be able to tell.
Yeah, right.
Like you wouldn't play it and be like, oh, this sounds weird, I wonder what material it is.
Right.
All right, so I guess now let's just get into some. I feel like we've gotten so off topic from Harmonics, but in a good way.
Yeah, it's not bad.
But I don't know, like let's start getting into some artists, maybe some specific songs that we particularly like the harmonic work in.
Yeah, so as I kind of mentioned earlier, I definitely would check out Lucas Brar, B-R-A-R. B-R-A-R. Yeah, he's a guitarist from Sweden. He's classically trained, and he plays jazz. I mean, this guy plays a lot, all on nylon string guitar, and he uses a lot of these like rake harmonics and these artificial harmonics, which is really cool. Composer wise, on the classical scheme of things, Barrios, Paraguayan composer, uses a lot of harmonics in his music. He's more late 19th century, just on the verge of 20th century. Villa-Lobos, Hector Villa-Lobos, he is a Brazilian composer. He uses a lot of harmonics in his music as well. As far as the pop and modern music,
well, I was showing you a little bit before we started. There's a couple bands where naturally they use harmonics just because they're both very talented, predominantly instrumental bands. The names are Polyphia and Chan. So Polyphia, Polyphia, and then I'm pretty sure I have heard so many people give so many different ideas of how they think it's pronounced. I think it's Chan. It's Chon. I don't know. At first, they seemed so like refined. I was like, is it Shone? Like some sort of like sort of more European like legal pronunciation. Someone called them Khan, and I was like, oh, that also kind of makes sense.
Oh, I could see that, like a silent H.
Yeah. I don't know, but both great bands. Some songs, "Goat" by Polyphia, which is that's the first one I showed you. Which the intro is just full of harmonics in there, and they're doing all these crazy slides and stuff. Very impressive and like precise work on that one. And then another song that I love. There's maybe only like 6 harmonic hits in total in the song, but it's just such a good song. I have to recommend checking it out. And I know I've showed you this one before. It's called Perfect Pillow by Chan. And there's this one part in the middle where they just get into this like dun 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 boop, for like the harmonics. Oh, love that song.
It's interesting though, because like we touched on is like the only times that you'll hear that is like predominantly guitar music.
Yeah.
Because there's not. I mean, you can do harmonics on like a ukulele, and I mean in theory you should be able to do harmonics on any fretted instrument.
I think Flea would often do quite a lot of harmonics on his bass playing.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I don't know, because you can't do harmonics on piano. This is why I say guitar is the most expressive instrument. I mean, I love the piano.
It's very creative with its sounds.
Well, and not only that, but like you can bend strings, you can put vibrato on the strings. You can't do that on a piano. I mean, you can obviously be very musically expressive on a piano. I'm not saying that you can't, but like. That's just why I love the guitar so much, because I just think there's just so much personality that you can put in it.
I can't believe I remembered this, but I actually forgot when we started talking about guitars. I was gonna mention something that I started doing on my guitars, and that is I'll hit like the full string, all 6 strings for the harmonics. I'll do like a boom, and then I'll go to the top, like past the frets, like oh, you took your guitar away, but like
and then
past
push
the
down
nut.
on them?
And I'll push down on them and I'll bend it so it'll be like.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
I
you
love
can't do
doing
that on a
stuff.
piano.
No, you can't. Stop sleeping on it, piano players. Come on, get your shit together.
You know, it's really funny though because like on electric pianos, there are plugins that you can bend the notes and stuff, and it sounds really funny. It's like wow.
Yeah, we had this guy named Seth in my first semester of Rock Band, and he was an incredibly talented keyboardist. We did this song called Happy Song by Bring Me the Horizon, and there's a lot of synth parts in it, and I was talking to the group like, listen, I know we're not gonna be able to do all these synth parts, so like let's just don't even worry about it. And he's just like, give me 5 minutes, and then in about 5 minutes he gets all of he starts getting them all ripped out, and then it sounded like when we played it, our drummer, I won't mention names, but I think you know who I'm talking about, was rushing it. It's supposed to be like a 4-minute and 19-second song, and we've got it done like 3 minutes and 50 seconds. It's insane. Yeah. But when we played it, it sounded pretty much the same. Like in terms of like it had all the synth, it had all the parts. So, keyboard, you can do some crazy things with the keyboard.
Right. So this is a little bit of a tangent.
Oh.
But this is music related, just because like we Eric and I have had some really good conversations that are kind of on and off of recording, and we kind of had gotten on the topic about being a classy musician and being just a nice person to work with. And I think it kind of goes to show that like, you can be really, really talented and be like, the greatest thing since sliced bread. But if you're not impressionable and you're not nice and easy to work with, then I guess that really doesn't matter.
Yeah, and like cooperative and stuff. And let me tell you, this guy was not cooperative.
Yeah, and so like this guy that we're talking about, he was, and not that we're trying to shit on him or anything. I mean, I just hope that maybe he takes some learning experiences from everything. But he's just those type of individuals that think that he's really, really good and he overrates himself and his actual ability. So he had a really, really big ego, just a big head on his shoulders, and he was just really, really hard to work with. And the arrogance was just too much for me to deal with. So I had to kind of step away from the situation. Luckily, we didn't have to deal with that for too long. The issues were kind of addressed on his own regard. But again, it's just like I love when I work or meet really, really talented people who are the most humblest people. Where they could be really, really arrogant and be really rude because their talent just speaks more than they are as the person that they are. But they're just really, really down to earth and usually really soft spoken, which is really interesting to me because it's I don't know, in sports and stuff, you have basketball players that are really, really talented and they're really, really outspoken and arrogant and they know that they're good. But when you have musicians that are really, really good like that and they're just really nice,
humble, and they
let
their passion drive them in music. Yeah. But I can tell we're already talking about two different people, and I agree with what you're saying. Yeah. But I'm talking about a drummer in specific. It's this dude. Yeah,
this guy, I don't know. I think but besides his playing, I think he's got some other issues that he probably should address.
Yeah, I'm talking about the guy you're talking about.
Yeah. Wait, we're talking about the same person, right?
Where were you talking?
Oh! I thought you were talking about,
Okay, so we were talking about the same person.
Remember the person who threw your...
Well, it's when you... we'll get to that story in a second, but
you
said the talented part, I was like,
okay.
No, because I would not. I don't know if I would consider this guy very talented.
No, I know who you're talking about. No, okay.
Because
well said.
This guy couldn't even play without a click track.
Okay, we're making it really evidently obvious.
You practice with a click track, but come on. Anyway,
I recommend a free application called Pro Metronome. Honestly, it's literally I live by this app, Pro Metronome. There's so many different things that you can do with it. Use a freaking metronome, please.
Metronomes are for the weak.
Dude, do you ever feel... No, do you ever feel like when you're practicing, you're like, oh, I'm playing this right. And then you actually play with a metronome and you're like, holy shit, I was playing that so wrong. But maybe by a superior, a teacher.
I do sometimes have a tendency to rush. Not because I wouldn't say... I'm kind of trying to protect myself here, but... more because you have that feel. Like when you're playing live with the band, you're getting excited, you want to rush a little bit. It's not because I don't know how fast it's supposed to be going, but yeah, no, I've had like, especially because like I moved out into an apartment, so I couldn't bring my drum set with me, and when I go back, I'll still try and play like I used to, and I'll record and I'll be like, okay, well, I'm really starting to slip up, aren't I? But anyway, there's a quick story for all you drummers out there. This is probably going to make you real hot right now.
Cringeworthy.
So in our rock band class, we've got like a whole myriad of drummers in there. There were more drummers in there than any other part.
Just shocking. Honestly.
There were like 4 drummers.
Yeah.
And so like I wanted to bring in some of my cool like equipment to sort of show off. I brought in a double bass pedal. You know, the only person who ever had a problem with anything I brought in is the exact same person every time. Yeah. And so like one example is I brought in a double bass pedal because you might want to use it even if you don't need to. It might be fun. And then I take like about 5 minutes to set it up. I start rearranging the set so that the pedals, you know, because you've got like, for those of you who don't know a double bass pedal, you've got like the regular pedal that you're hitting the bass with. And then it has like an arm that connects to another pedal that works the second, you know, like
it's like alternating.
Yeah. And so I had to rearrange like the snare and the hi-hat and a couple cymbals and everything to get this. So it took me about 5-7 minutes to get it all set up. And then I go away and I'm like looking at my guitar. And by the way, this guy also touched my guitar without asking, which it's an LTD that's $150, but it's the principal.
Yeah, it's principal.
But then I turn around and my double bass pedal is just sitting on the risers and everything's back to where it was. And I was like, hey man, listen, all right, I was just trying to, you know, give us something else to work with just in case we want to be creative. The other drummers seemed a little excited about it. He's like, I don't care. I don't want to use a double bass pedal. And I was like, okay, well.
You should have said it. Is it because you don't want to use it or is it because you don't know how to use it?
I kind of wanted to. I kind of also wanted to say something like, well, I don't imagine you're going to be drumming on any of our songs anyway, so. But, and then this is the one that was just, I could not fathom that another drummer did this to my face. And I brought in these really interesting brushes that I have, which are like, they're kind of, they're not metal, they're like a blue sort of plastic material, and they've got like this little loop on them so that you can move it up and down and then change how much of like the brush you want out or turn them into more of just like a really floppy stick. And so I was like sort of playing with them on the song that we were on. It was a lighter song. And so then I set them down on the snare and I go to help start bringing out some amps. And I'm coming out of the amp room and he walks up to me with my sticks in his hand. He's like, are these yours? And I was like, yeah, you like them? And he's like, they suck. And then he just chucks them across the room. Like, I'm not saying like he chucks them onto the ride, across the room. And I like froze. I was like, I don't know what to do. Do I get mad? Do I let it slide?
Do you punch him? Do you grab him by the shirt of his collar?
Oh my God. I'm a pretty easygoing guy, so I was just sort of like, you know what?
In shock.
Yeah.
Because that breaks like so many social norms. Like, it's not like you even did anything to like evoke this kid or like make.
No, and I brought him in because I was like, hey man, do you want to try him out? You want to like see if you like him? And he just, there's complete disrespect. And like drummers, you know, you don't just take someone else's sticks and fuck with them.
I just couldn't even. I mean, I just can't believe what was going through this kid's head. Like to think that was acceptable.
It would have been so easy to just set him, set him somewhere else. Just
imagine if your teacher gave you like his drumsticks and said, "Hey, you should try this specific brand. These have nylon tips on them or whatever. Like here, you use them, and you're like, no, I hate these, and you just throw them to the side. Like, what do you think?
Dude, you're probably being asked to leave at that point.
Yeah, like you're damaging equipment, and it's like your own. I don't know. That's your own property, dude. That's so.
Dude, if those were like metal, like or wire brushes, then I probably would have lost my shit. Because like the plastic, like that is plastic, but like if it was something more delicate. Oh.
So what if they would have broke, like had like obvious damage where they had to be replaced? What would your reaction have been?
I don't know, because the thing is, he threw them so far away. I couldn't initially observe the damage.
I mean, like,
so if they did break, I would have probably had the same reaction and then walked over and then got pissed. I don't know.
Could you imagine if he would have done that with a guitar?
I'm not sure if he's strong enough to throw a guitar. I'm just kidding.
I know this kid is pretty scrawny. I mean, not like we're like big and macho or anything.
No, we're both
pretty scrawny ourselves. But
I might do a push-up or two. So I'm just kidding. Dude, I don't know. Man. But let me just say that, like, the college that I'm talking about is a community college where you have to take people.
Yeah.
The music department was still considering kicking him out, which I can't imagine being so disliked that you're about to be kicked out of a community college.
Yeah. I don't know. I think this individual had some problems that were greater than us knowing.
Yeah, I think that's part of...
But, I mean, it doesn't justify the fact that you do something like that.
But at the same time, that's part of why I didn't make such a big deal of it. It's like, you know what,
It's not worth the time.
It's not worth the time right now. I imagine if he's going to get what's coming to him, it's not going to be from me. I'm just going to see it happen, hopefully.
Yeah, imagine if that happened to somebody who's, like, really, really sensitive about that. Or, like, I'm not saying that you're not sensitive. I'm just saying, like, imagine that in a situation
someone with a little bit less of an understanding temperament than me.
Yeah. Maybe. Like, obviously, there are things that are accidental that happen. Like, it doesn't make it any less shitty.
Right.
Like, if I had my guitar on a stand and somebody tripped on the wire and it fell to the ground and put a big ding in it, I would obviously be very, very, very upset. But, like, if it's accidental and there was obviously no intent, I mean, you should know to be careful. But I would be more forgiving of a situation like that than you blatantly just push the guitar down and you're just like, oh, well, now the headstock just broke off,
Just good life lesson. Just don't fuck with other people's instruments or equipment.
Don't be an ass.
And, like, just always ask. Like, so this happened before that guitar incident I talked about where I was just sitting there and he just picks up my guitar and starts looking like he's about to play it.
Oh, yeah.
And at that point, I literally had the stick incident in my head flash through and I just looked at him and I was like, do not ever touch my guitar.
Yeah.
And he sort of put it down and, like, scurried off. But
I think there's also a difference, like, when like, an individual like that doesn't necessarily know what the fuck they're doing. You know what I mean? It'd be different. Like, if I have a really well-respected guitar player that wants to try out my guitar, I have no problem with that. But, like, if you're just going to come up to me and just grab it off me or, grab it, like, when I'm not looking, it's just like, what the frig?
Dude, do you remember the little anecdote I shared with you about when this particular drummer had an interaction with our good friend Ben Brand?
Oh,
you remember I told you about that?
Yeah.
Oh man, I was so proud of this. We've got this friend named Ben Brand who is he's a guitarist, and he and this if you know the metal band Tyrant, they're a local band, but they're actually pretty prestigious. They go and do festivals. Mm-hmm. The drummer, this wasn't the semester that you were in; it was the semester right before you. And he was making a song with our friend Ben, and then.
First mistake on Ben's behalf.
Well, it was just a very by the books, like, thrash metal song. Not very creative, but I mean, it was doing its purpose.
Very straightforward.
It was very straightforward, and like, right. I didn't dislike it, but like, after they play it, Ben comes to the rise and he sits down, and this drummer is sitting next to us, and he goes, "Your song's not very creative, is it? It's kind of just the same thing over and over." And then Ben just, without hesitation, like, he had this in his back pocket or something.
He was ready.
He's just like, well, when you learn to play your instrument, then you can talk to me about mine. Something like that. I was like, oh, woo,
dude,
Ben.
that's so ballsy. Like, I wish I was there to have witnessed that.
I can't remember. I feel like
he didn't have anything to say.
No, he didn't. But I can't remember his reaction. I can't remember defeat. But
yeah, I mean, there's nothing that you can really like say it. But it's like, it's too bad that, like, I understand that everybody who wants to be musical and stuff should have some degree of competency on the instruments that they're playing. But, like, that's, like, such a shitty attack. Like, learn to play your instrument. I mean, because it's, like, I don't know. Like, that's like the same, like, locker room talk where you're, like, you lost the game. It's like, oh, my God, you couldn't make a freaking layup. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
no, I definitely get it.
And it's like, music is supposed to be about creativity and, like, being creative and stuff. And, like, the fact that it's, like, competitive as a sport, which we've talked about this before, about music being kind of like a blood sport, especially guitar players. And,
Oh, yeah. And it gets super competitive at the academic level.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Like, one thing is, like, we understand that music is an art form. Mm-hmm. And so it's very much, like, I feel very blessed to be getting into music because it is very, like, do what you want to. To a certain degree, people can't really tell you what to do. But at the same time, like, it's also one of the most competitive, like, self-crushing Like it is a tough thing to get into, because part of it being so creative is it's all you. You're putting yourself out there every single time you start playing.
Right.
And so any sort of criticism that comes towards you, it's so personal.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You take it. Yeah. I mean, I think it's definitely a lot more difficult if you're writing original content. Unless you're just being a cover band.
Oh yeah. If you're like practicing a piece for like a teacher, if he says that you're not doing it well, there's this very certain level of, well, I should have practiced more. I could definitely do this song more justice. But yeah, if it is more like your original stuff, that is when you start to get into like
that territory where you're like, dude,
it's just a represent. Yeah. Oh, and then you start to wonder if like, oh, should I not be a musician, dude? Oh, did I just waste the past like 5-10 years of my life?
Well, music is like such a thinking man's game too, because it's such a solitary pursuit. You know what I mean? Like the hours of practice that you put in, you're alone. I mean, I am alone with my instrument more than I am alone with anything else. You know, I spend more time with my guitar than I do with anybody or any other thing. But it's because I love to do it and I really enjoy it. But like, I mean, I got up this morning and I've already put in like 4 hours of practice, and I'll probably put in another 4 tonight.
Oh man, I respect musicians who are able to do that. I have days where I can like practice a lot, but I've got like ADHD, so I have such like a short attention span. It's so hard to like be able to slow everything down and just go incrementally over everything. But
I think it's also a matter of like I say that as a number, but it's like, okay, those 4 hours like straight practice where you're like attentive and focused. Because like, I think that's the other important thing. Like, they say, well, you should practice a solid 20 minutes a day instead of a solid 4 hours one day a week. Right. Because it's a difference of progressing in a regular fashion. Then if you have 10 to 15 minutes a day to practice every single day consistently, of like straight practice with no distraction, that's always going to yield better results than practicing for 4 hours of one day a week with distractions. You know?
And we're starting to run on quite a bit here, but just you start to look at the time and you're like, oh wow, podcasts are fun, man. But I guess one thing I wanna make sure to point out before, I don't know if we've mentioned this, I don't think we have, but it's also so expensive. And I think I've mentioned this to you. There's like that saying of musicians are people who get $5,000 of equipment into like, or like maybe $10,000 of equipment into a $5,000 van to go like 50 miles to make like $50 or like $500 or something like.
That's like the thing. You have to be really creative with your gigs, and that's why, like, I think as a young person, it's important to buy the expensive gear now, one piece at a time, right? Instead of doing one drop all at once. And what I mean by that is, like, I'm always thinking about constantly trying to upgrade my equipment so that I'm not having to do it all at one drop. So, like, if let's just say I have a $2,000 guitar, $4,000 PA or whatever, and then all this other extra stuff around it that leads me to get $10,000. Well, instead of dropping that all at once, gradually use the things that you have and work your way up to those bigger ticket items. So, like, if you have a guitar that's a couple $100 and it works, then it works. You don't just want to, like, go out to the gate and just buy all this expensive gear. Because the other thing is like, the gear that you buy is only a fraction of your playability and your musicality. So, like, you can have the most expensive gear in the world, but if you're not able to play that gear
if you're not looking for every single little thing that you can get out of that instrument, then what's the point?
You should always upgrade your equipment as you upgrade as a musician, or as you improve as a musician. You don't need to go out and buy the most expensive guitar. You should buy something that's beginner level and then progressively work your way up to something more professional when you get to that point.
Try to really get a feel for what you need.
Yeah. Because, there are really, really well-respected bands that are playing $400, $500 made in Mexico Strats that are really, really awesome guitars. And they're not but they're not using expensive-ass gear,
Like for example, Nirvana, like, when they would go, they're very used to, like, breaking their guitars at the end of shows and stuff. And so, all those live shows, Kurt would be using, like, not even a left-handed guitar because those weren't that popular yet, but he would take, like, a $100 to $200 right-handed guitar, and he would just flip it over and then play the show like that, and then
if it works, it works. Yeah, definitely.
All right. Well, I feel like that's a pretty decent place to wrap it up. I feel like our past 3 episodes have all been pretty long, pretty close to about the hour mark. If you guys would like us to try and compress them down a little bit more, let us know in the comments. But so far, I feel like we'll have no problem if we just keep busting out hour longs like this.
Yeah, they're not.
I thought we were gonna have a problem trying to find enough content off of Harmonics, as amazing as Harmonics are.
Lots of different tangents and stories.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for joining us for the MuseTube Podcast. Once again, I am Eric.
Justin.
All right, and we will see you in the next one. See ya.
Peace.